My name is Tim McDonnell, and my current job is National Training Manager for a company called Mitchell One, which is a division of Snap-on Tools. I guess my favorite oxymoron is career path because through a series of fortunate accidents I ended up in this position. I went back to California when I was about 20 years old and needed to get a job. So I got a job in auto recycling, which is taking cars apart, and that's where I learned how the components work and go together. So after that, again looking for a job, I found one at Mitchell where I could actually be a parts interchange editor. So yes, I actually worked on books. We all used to use these big brown manuals to work on cars and such. My workday tends to be interfacing with our sales reps and also our customers, end users of the product, and just kind of serving as a subject matter expert. We also do a couple live workshop events around the country. And so one thing leads to another, and here we are. Hi, this is Tim. I lived in California and worked in the office there, and was quite happy doing that. And then my father passed away in 1988, and it was pretty clear that we needed to move east and take care of Mom. And we had talked about leaving California. It just kind of sped things up a little bit. I went to work for another company that had a relationship for Mitchell for 5 years. And about that time of minor turmoil and maybe having to move to Minnesota, Mitchell presented itself once again, and I came back, and that will be 20 years ago in February. And so what happened was, my way back in was to be the Eastern training representative, which means that I could live in the eastern United States, but I would have extensive travel. And I did in the beginning. I had to go out and work with reps wherever they were.
He was never gone for long periods of time, you know, maybe 5 days at the most. Sometimes he'd be gone for 3 or 4 days, come home for a day or two and take off again, but then he'd come home. It was usually, when he was traveling a lot, it was in the spring and in the fall. And then just every so often during the summer and the winter.
The majority of my time is spent working from the home office now, so it kind of came about as a matter of default, and as long as I've continued to prove my output, I'm allowed to do that. So that's how we ended up here. We reached a point about 15 years ago where we had this old structure that was a blacksmith shop, and we had to make a decision whether to fix it up or tear it down. Well, we made the wrong decision. We fixed it up, and it turned out pretty good now. What we did is we fixed up the inside, but the outside still looked, you know, like a chicken coop, I suppose, or something along those lines. Then when we remodeled the house, we actually fixed up the outside as well. For me, just to, you know, be away from the distractions in the house and just kind of build my own private Idaho out here. The environment is interesting. I like being out in the open, so therefore the doors and windows are open. We do have a small selection of office cats, and they go in and out the window because then, even when we're locked up at night, they are able to get in and out. Now, much of my role is kind of being the go-between between customers and reps, or management and reps, maintaining websites of information, obviously building videos. Right now, on these two screens, I have a script, and I actually recorded the audio. In this exercise, we'll set up a can job consisting of parts and labor operations used to perform a cooling system flush and pressure check. The good news is that I largely determine what my day is unless I'm up against somebody else's deadline, and therefore I'm allowed to be pretty creative about how the job gets done. I happened to see a couple of rock concerts that were a big influence. Probably the biggest ones were Emerson, Lake and Palmer and King Crimson when I was about 16. And so after King Crimson, I came home and sold my stereo and bought my first terrible bass and bass amp, and started to make some awful noises. Did have a pretty good start with a high school band. Did that. Played with people various times. Actually was pretty serious about the music scene in San Diego between 1981 and 86. And by 86, now I'm married.
group that was married. So he made me go with him to all the rehearsals. When they practiced in the house and there were, everybody was home, they were in one end of the house and everybody else was in the other end of the house, and the light fixtures would shake because, things were loud and it would just resonate through the wood of the house, and you'd see the lamp on the ceiling would shake.
Then we moved back here, and slowly but surely I did meet a drummer, and we would just casually jam and play, if not every week, pretty close to it, and that was great until he moved away, which was amazingly 15 years ago, but he has just moved back, and so we're about to resume all of our bad habits.
So I'm glad he's found somebody to play with. Jeff comes out and has moved back here from Florida, so that's an outlet for him, and I'm very happy he has it.
I might be ready for some new speakers. He's been with me a long, long time. This is the first bass I got in high school in 1976 when I kind of graduated. Given my demographic, and my history, I'm going to gravitate to a lot of things from the 70s, but also some things from the 80s and 90s, and even some brand new releases that I've been pretty excited about. So I would have the complete Genesis and King Crimson and Led Zeppelin and Gentle Giant and King's Axe. All of those bands I would have pretty complete catalogs, but also I'm intrigued by the newer albums by the Aristocrats, Beck. My only rule about music is it either hits me over the head or it doesn't. If it hits me over the head, then I start collecting and scheming on ways to go to concerts and such. For example, Stephen Wilson, Porcupine Tree. I've seen Stephen Wilson 3 times this year. So you sit here and you do this, and sometimes an idea pops out, sometimes not. What happens is I get an idea and I go, oh, all I have to do is hit one button here and record to play along with something that my heroes have developed. Chances are it's fairly complicated, and it's 2 things. It's sense of time, and it's showing up at the right time and making the right noises. And I think my sense of time is good, but my note choices I probably need to work on. I'm really good at collecting more hay for the haystack, so that I make these brief recordings before the idea gets away, and then I go back to those ideas and try to fish them out to do something with it. Unfortunately, the creation of those is much more frequent than the actual going back and developing the idea into something. But it's fun. We enjoy it.
We've been married 30 years, so it's like I'm used to this, and it's a activity for him, where some people like to hunt, some people like to play ball, some people do other things. This is his hobby. This is what he likes to do, and I'm glad he has it.
Life is good.